5ක් කාලයක් ලැබෙනවා.
Stuti Garmantumani. The question of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and its effects on humanity is great. I thank Honorable Imtiaz Bakir Maka for bringing this motion today to Parliament. This is very important. And Honorable Member, today we are discussing an important motion that raises questions regarding peace and security, development and human rights of the Palestinian people. An immediate backdrop to this motion is our shared concern over continuous violations of human rights and humanitarian law in the occupied Palestinian territories. Instances abound of denial of justice for victims and their families, organized settler violence which destroys villages and homes of Palestinians, throwing them out of their lands and livelihoods, and violation of their social, cultural, religious and economic rights. The recent attack on Jenin stands out as a glaring example of what an occupying power and an army of settlers could do to innocent people. It amounts to a form of collective punishment imposed on the Palestinians for what they are, a nation rooted in their own land and culture. Psychologically speaking, Palestinians appear to be a nation of cumulative trauma brought upon them by the occupying power each passing day. Recently, I read an article published by a reputed news agency which states that there is no issue of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, amongst the Palestinian people there. According to the article, it is because there is nothing for them to experience stress disorder, since attacks on them and the trauma are of a continuing nature right through the year. My colleagues have spoken and will speak during the time allocated on this adjournment motion today about the existential challenges and other multifarious issues faced by the Palestinian people at the hands of the occupying power. Let me therefore turn my attention to a fundamental concern which has received less focus in the context of the Middle East and internationally. We all know that Palestinian people's collective tragedy began with the establishment of a new state on their territory in 1948. Having suffered the worst in the World War under Nazi Germany, the Jewish people, collectively victimized and stateless, were settled on the Palestinian homeland. It was so that they could rebuild their lives, recover from the wounds of persecution, and live in a stable environment required for their flourishing as a people in the then emerging New World Order. The New World Order had as its main plank the objectives of peace, justice, development, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. It rested upon the United Nations Charter, which recognized the worth and dignity of all human beings, as well as the principle of equality amongst people as well as nations. It reaffirmed the collective duty of humankind to respect the rights and freedoms of one another, to secure a world free from the scourge of war, and to work together towards establishing a future in which all peoples and nations lived in harmony and prosperity. It is this vision of a just, peaceful and rules-based new international order that was to underpin and inspire the search for solutions to questions including those that the World War left in its wake. The situation of the uprooted Jewish community was an important question that required an immediate, just and equitable solution. It was in the nature of the world order that was thus envisioned that people should live in dignity, in peace, in coexistence, and in an environment that fostered respect for the rights and freedoms of each other, as well as mutual understanding and accommodation. In short, it was envisioned as a blueprint for diverse peoples and nations bonded by the common goal of humanity to pursue their aspirations peacefully and prosper collectively, thereby contributing to a world safer for all. Ironically, however, as events unfolded in the ensuing years, such expectations only transformed into a perverse reality. Contrary to what was intended, some of the beneficiaries of the new vision of world order, a just, peaceful and rules-based system, indeed became its own undoers. The innate strength and legitimacy of the post-World War international order began to be challenged and thwarted by the very actors who benefited from it in the very first place. Today, what we see after 75 years of the establishment of Israel in a region which the West considers strategically important is a state where some of the vital principles and objectives of the UN Charter and multilateralism as a basis of the international order are being unraveled. continuing violations of human rights and humanitarian law and injustice against the Palestinian people do not just remain beyond the pale of accountability, whether domestic or international. Rather, the culture of impunity fostered by a blanket cover extended by certain states has now begun to eat into the essence of democracy and independence of state institutions here. What are we to make of all this? Is it the beginning of a new international order driven only by strategic interests and not by the principles of equality, justice and humanity that is being envisioned now? Honourable Member, I'll just take another 10-20 seconds. I listened to a speech by Honourable Sir Gerald Kaufman, a Member of Parliament in the House of Commons in the United Kingdom who represents the Labour Party. He says, I was brought up as an Orthodox Jew and a Zionist. He says he knew Ben-Gurion as a former Prime Minister. He was a close friend of Golda Meir, a former Prime Minister. And he says his parents came, Sir Gerald Kaufman came to Britain as a refugee from Poland. And when Nazis were attacking his grandmother, who was ill in bed in her home of Stasov, a German soldier shot his grandmother dead. He says, Madam Deputy Speaker, in his speech he says, I quote, Madam Deputy Speaker, my grandmother did not die to provide cover for Israeli soldiers murdering Palestinian grandmothers. He also says Israel was born out of Jewish terrorism. Jewish terrorists hanged 2 British sergeants and booby-trapped their bodies and massacred 254 Palestinians in 1948. He finally says, I quote again, it is time for our government, he's asking the British government, to make clear to the Israeli government that its conduct and policies are unacceptable and to impose a total arms ban on Israel. It is time for real peace. Therefore, I would leave it to the state that observes strategic reticence on this matter to reflect on it diligently before it is too late. The continuing suppression and violence against Palestinian people should stop forthwith. Thank you.